There we go. Hey, everyone. Welcome to episode 437 of the All Dolphins podcast on this Thursday, December 26, 2024. Pleased to be joined by Adam Beasley from Pro Football Network on this day after Christmas. Happy holidays, Bees. Hope you enjoyed the holiday with the fam.
Happy Boxing Day, Alan Poupar.
Thank you. Very, very
okay.
well done.
All right, what is Boxing Day? What is it?
If somebody can correct me in the comments as well, you guys would never do that. I kid. I believe it is a tradition that started, I believe it's of British origin, where on the day after Christmas, boxes that had been used to wrap gifts were given for whatever purpose. I don't know. There began the tradition of Boxing Day. I could be completely off base, but I think that's what it sounds like.
And they play a lot of soccer on Boxing Day. Well, football they call it in the UK, right? That's a huge day, I think, for big rivalries in the EPL.
I know you're not asking me about soccer because if you think I know nothing about the Dolphins, folks who are listening or tuning in, I appreciate you tuning in. If you think I know nothing about the Dolphins and football, I know even less about soccer.
All right. So what do you do on Boxing Day in Canada? Is it a federal holiday? Do you get the day off?
I'd never heard of it until I actually saw it some online 1 year long after I had moved away from Canada. I never celebrated in Canada. I have no idea. No idea.
Yeah, it's probably more of the Anglo provinces celebrate it because it's the British.
Maybe.
Okay,
I think enough Boxing Day. You had a good Christmas?
I had a great Christmas. And you?
Okay. Yeah. Christmas Eve, not so much because we had some sick people in the household. But yesterday we did a little white elephant gift exchange at the in-laws, and that actually was a lot of fun.
That's fun.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
I made 16 pounds worth of beef yesterday, so that was fun.
Nice.
Had the whole family over. It was great. Thankfully the weather was nice, so we sat outside, and I made a roast on the grill. Slow cooked it for like 3 hours. It was great.
Very nice. Dolphins in practice on Wednesday. How's that for a segue? They practiced on Thursday, and there's a lot of stuff to talk about, and we'll dive into it. Let's go. I'm going to start with this because it's just different. It's unique. Not that it affects the Dolphins in any way, shape, or form in 2024. The Shaq Barrett deal, Dolphins deciding on Thursday to go ahead and waive him from the reserve retired list. Now for him, it means if he clears waivers, now he can sign with any team and can play. If somebody claims him off waivers, taking his salary, he would have to remain on reserve retired for the rest of 2024. The contract tolls belongs to that team heading into 2025. I'm going to guess, even though it hasn't come out, there were probably some financial considerations there involving Barrett and the Dolphins to be like, we'll throw back some of the signing bonus money if you let us go.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on this particular subject?
Yeah, I mean, it was certainly charitable of the Dolphins. They didn't have to do that by any stretch of the imagination. My guess is they see the writing on the wall. They know they're not going to the playoffs. So it's not like their fear is probably we're going to subject them to waivers. Excuse me, I'm battling a cold, so I got to keep myself.
You too?
Yep.
Same here.
Yeah. We're playing hurt today. So my guess is they didn't want someone to claim him off of waivers and then have to face him. That would be terrible for them because they're under absolutely no obligation to give him what he wants. And if it would hurt them from a competitive standpoint, now that they're far enough into it, the Browns, the Jets, it's not a big deal, right? It's not like either of those two teams, if they claim them, it's going to hurt the Dolphins. Their Dolphins aren't going to the playoffs. Very likely. I mean, about 19 different things need to happen, which I believe you have the exact rundown.
But I do.
Yep. So yeah, no, it was a nice move for them. I think it's the same as you're going to see if they lose or they were eliminated on Sunday with Calais Campbell. I mean, it sounds like that was the handshake agreement that they made with him because he wants the ring chase, certainly. And so if the Dolphins can do right by him, they will. I think Calais has earned infinitely more goodwill in the organization than Shaq Barrett did, who retired and kind of screwed them on the eve of training camp. But I think by and large, it's good business not to hold someone hostage like that.
No, I agree. And how's this for a great scenario? The Dolphins waive Calais Campbell after this week. If they wind up being eliminated from playoff contention, he signs with a contender, chases the ring, decides to play another season, and then he re-signs with the Dolphins in the offseason. How's that? There you go.
I mean, I would certainly do everything I could to bring him back. He has been incredibly good. I mean, particularly at the value. You're not going to give him a ton of money, but if you can get him for $3-4 million or whatever it is next year, I would 100% do that because the guy has been an absolute baller for them. He is. Let's do this. Let's rank the best performers that this team has had this year, and I think Zach Steeler's number one. I think he has been their best player this year.
It was funny because today was coordinator day at Dolphin camp, and then our buddy Joe Scheib from the Palm Beach Post is like preface a question to Anthony Weaver of like, my personal choice is Zach Steeler as team MVP, and we're all looking around like, I think it'd be everybody's good choice.
Yeah, right. How many sacks is he? What's he up to now?
8.5 sacks from the defensive tackle position, and balling out in every aspect. So yes, I agree. Zach Steeler would be number one. Who's your number two?
I would probably Calais would be number two, right? I would say. I mean, Achane has been really valuable to them, and I think a lot of his average being down is a function of the offensive line. But you get much past then. I mean, Ramsey's been good. I mean, Teron Armstead, when he played, was fantastic. Like, he was really good for them.
Yep.
So it's hard to rank. And then I think you need to put two in the top five somewhere, 5 or 6 somewhere, because we've seen what this offense looks like when he's not out there.
Yeah, we're gonna discuss that a little bit later on. But yeah, there's a little caveat there, though.
Yeah, so I look forward to hearing it and seeing the reaction in the comments when we do have that conversation. No, but I think there's a lot of 2s and 3s out there, but the clear number one is Zach Steeler, and I hope he goes to the Pro Bowl. Hey, how about Jason Sanders? I mean, talk about value to the franchise. Not even joking. Like, how many wins would they have if they just had an average kicker this year from distance?
Yep. And you see other teams at times need a kick either to put themselves within one score or, to tie the score, and then plop, they miss it. And Jason Sanders has been money. Yeah, he had the 2 missed extra points in back-to-back weeks, but you need a big field goal. That dude is money. You know who else has had a good year? The Miami, and this headline might ring a bell to you. The Miami Dolphins no longer have a Kader Kohu problem.
So the backstory to that is, and I agree with you, he's been excellent this year and saved the game for them last week. He's been really, really good. Much better than he was last year. And yes. At one point last year, I did have the subhead, the Miami Dolphins have a Kader Kohu problem. And I did feel a little guilty about it afterwards, and you guys were all busting my chops. But you know what? Sometimes you got to tell it like it is. And they do not have a Kader Kohu problem at all this year. He has been excellent. Is he in a contract here?
He's going to be an RFA, and Dolphins are not letting him go. So that's
correct. Yeah. No, and I mean, you give him the first-round tender if you have to, and if someone wants to give you a first-round pick for it, that's fine. But you absolutely do whatever you can to keep the guy.
Completely agree. You mentioned before. Let me get to it. The scenarios that have to play out for the Dolphins to make the playoffs. They should be well known by now. In case the one must, obviously, the Dolphins have to beat the Cleveland Browns on Sunday, the New York Jets in Week 18. Then 2 of the following 3 need to occur. LA Chargers lose their final 2 games at New England, at Las Vegas. The Denver Broncos lose their final 2 games at Cincinnati, home against Kansas City. Indianapolis Colts lose 1 of their final 2 games at New York Giants, at home against Jacksonville. So,
oh my God!
Exactly, that's the problem. Because I think the Dolphins are going to go 9-8, but the problem is I don't think they're going to get. They probably are not going to get any of those.
No, I mean, I can see the Broncos losing to the Bengals. I
agree. But then the Chiefs don't have anything to play for in Week 18 now that they've.
You called it like 3 weeks ago, right?
Yep.
I remember talking about you. Very well played, Alan Pupar. You called it about how. That was the one thing the Dolphins really need to worry about was the Chiefs having nothing to play for in Week 18, which is now the case, and they don't have anything to play for 2 weeks because they're going to have to bye too, right?
Mm-hmm. And I wrote about this on Miami Dolphins on SI.com, where the content always is free, same as Mr. Beasley's outlet, PFN.com. The history of teams that have clinched the number 1 seed before the final week of the regular season. I did it since 2018, pardon me, which was the first time the Chiefs went to the AFC Championship game with Patrick Mahomes, or had the number 1 seed. I'm sorry. Now it's been 4 times in 7 seasons, and we're probably looking at the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game for a 7th consecutive season. I'm sorry.
Am I boring you, Alan?
No, I'm bored by the AFC where quick trivia question, Adam Beasley. Last season, where that neither the Chiefs nor the Patriots were in the AFC Championship game.
Oh, that's a great question.
Mm.
Because the Patriots had a couple of years where they'd lose in the divisional round.
Go ahead.
So is it Brady's last year in New England?
No.
The
Chiefs were in the AFC Championship game.
Yeah. I mean, it had to have been like 2015 or something, 2014.
2010.
Wow.
That is, so now it's going to be 14 consecutive years.
Holy moly.
Chiefs or Patriots. That's why I yawn. And full respect, hat tip to the Chiefs organization. Before that, the Patriots. Outstanding. You have to respect their work, but it's like, I mean, getting old. Like,
well, really. Yeah, and this won't be popular among your viewers, but come on, let's see the Bills do it, right? Let's see the Bills with Josh Allen go to the Super Bowl. I want to see that fan base. You can hate them if you're a Dolphins fan, but that fan base deserves it, man. They have been through hell and back with that team. Only franchise to lose 4 consecutive Super Bowls, which is an incredible statistic. And they haven't been back since, and that was like 30 years ago. So, yeah, no, I'm with you. I am sick and tired. Like, I look at it from a sports writer's perspective. What new can you write about the Kansas City Chiefs?
Yep.
What? The only thing that would be new is like if Mahomes got hurt in the AFC Championship game and it was Carson Wentz in the Super Bowl. Like that is the only thing that would be different. It just shows you that coach and quarterback not everything else is just background noise. It really is coach and quarterback. If you get the coach and quarterback right, you're going to be in it every single year.
Yeah, and for those who are going to very quickly point out 2 things I want to say here. Number one is, I know that you made the good point. It's not going to play well with some Dolphin fans, but it's okay if the Dolphins can't win the Super Bowl this year to have some compassion, empathy, whatever, towards what the Buffalo Bills also have gone through. Number one. And number 2, I know a lot of people are going to point to Patrick Mahomes' stats, which are rather pedestrian, except, and I've said this all year, whenever they need a play, that dude makes it. And guess who leads the NFL in 3rd down conversion rate offensively? It's the Kansas City Chiefs. And it's not by accident. So how did we get on that topic anyway?
We were talking about playoff scenarios and
all
that.
And of course, it's possible the Dolphins will go to bed Saturday night having been eliminated because the Broncos and the Chargers play Saturday, and if they both win, the Dolphins are done. And then if that happens, be interesting to see. For example, we mentioned Teron Armstead. Does Teron Armstead play on his gimpy knee if the Dolphins don't, are out against Cleveland? Game against the Browns is a game the Dolphins, again, clearly should win. The Browns have 3 wins. They're without their starting quarterback, James Winston. Like that kid matters. They might be without David Njoku, who's just about one of the. Sorry?
Chubb's out for the year.
Chubb's out for the year. It may be Dorian Thompson-Robinson at quarterback. It may be Jameis Winston. It may be their other quarterback on the roster whose name escapes me right now. It doesn't matter. It's a game the Dolphins should win. Go ahead. You're going to say something?
What would the narrative be if they lose that game?
Oh, my God. Wow.
What would it be? Because, I mean, I think you would probably agree that Steve Ross was sending a message last week by giving Mike McDaniel the game ball. And the Dolphins were sending a message by sharing that video. Like, they didn't have to share that video. After that, basically, seal of approval for 2025, they go and lose to the Cleveland Browns with DTR as their quarterback.
Yeah, and let's just hope we don't have a repeat. I believe you were on the beat end of 2014, December 21st. It was actually 10 years and a day before what happened last Sunday with the game ball was Stephen Ross walks into the locker room after a 37-35 win against the Vikings. Dolphins already eliminated from the playoffs, and he tells all the writers, I got an early Christmas present for you guys. You will not have to worry about coaching search because Joe Philbin's coming back. Well, Joe Philbin did come back, was fired after 4 games the next season.
Yeah, I think Mike McDaniel is a better coach than Joe Philbin. I'll give him that.
I agree.
And I think that they actually have a brighter future than the 2015 Dolphins had. I think that, we can discuss, and I wrote it, that they should move on from Chris Greer. But I think that if they figure out how to fix their offensive line for the first time ever, this team would look a lot different. I think, again, it's all predicated on your quarterback staying healthy and maybe getting a better backup in there in 2025, knowing that your quarterback gets hurt a lot. But if Tua plays 18 games, they probably make the playoffs, right? This is a playoff team if he plays all 18 games.
Except, is it more than just a playoff team? Because again, you look at the numbers and the performances against the teams that are playoff opponents. It's 1-4 this year, and totally not competitive against Green Bay. I mean, they got spanked, and against Houston. And I get they were missing their 2 starting tackles, were actually their second and thirds if you count Austin Jackson. But that was not a very impressive performance.
No,
starting with your quarterback in a game that you needed to have. So that's my concern. Having said that, and since apparently everybody has chimed in, and it was out there on Twitter from our good friend Barry Jackson that the discussion in the media room. My opinion was not out there. I guess I was not there when they were discussing it. I'm almost of the inclination of like running back with the whole crew, including Chris Greer, including Mike McDaniel, including Tua, Tyreek, Jalen Waddle, because you kind of tied into them contractually at least through next season before you have some escapes. And then if it's no different than next year, then you blow it up. Because I don't know what happens if you bring in a GM where your coach is in place, your quarterback is in place. So you're kind of like limiting him a little bit in what he can do. So I think the commitment's been made with the contract extensions to this group. And I think Chris Greer is part of this group. That would be my position on this.
Yeah.
Here. Go ahead.
I get it. It makes a lot of sense. I think that you know what you have in Chris Greer. Like, you're not going to learn. Like, you're just sticking with him just to stick with him then, because you know what you have in him. He's been the general manager now for 6 seasons. They've won 0 playoff games. He's been with the franchise for 25 years. They've won 1 playoff game. Okay, you know what you have with Chris Greer, and it's not good enough to win at the highest level. My guess, what it's going to come down to 3 people's decision, like opinions, I believe. Steve Ross, obviously, Tom Garfinkel, and Mike McDaniel. Like, because we've all agree that Mike's coming back. If he goes to Steve and is like, hey, man, I didn't have enough this year, and we made some decisions, and even, hey, I had a hand in it, I need a better GM helping me to make those personnel decisions. That would be hard for Steve to say no to. And yes, you will probably limit yourself in a way of getting the number 1A GM candidate. I think what you do is you get someone who's friendly with Mike to be the GM.
Yeah.
And that way they're still tied together, right? And if it doesn't work, you really rip the Band-Aid off. I mean, Dennis Hickey was here for a cup of coffee, right? Mm-hmm. I think year 2, Dennis Hickey no longer had personnel say. Like, they brought in Tannenbaum in year 2, and though he still was the GM for 2 seasons. Yeah, exactly. I think if all indications are they want to roll with Mike, I think that's how you address the GM situation. Or you're bringing a GM and say, hey, the decision's totally yours. If you want to fire Mike McDaniel, go for it. The owner wants to keep him, though, so that's a bad first step in your career to go and fire the guy the owner wants to keep. I doubt that's going to happen.
Yeah, and the other playing devil's advocate would be, while we like Mike McDaniel as a head coach, has he done enough to justify having that kind of power? Particularly if he had a hand in some of the roster decisions that have come back to bite the Dolphins, particularly the lack of securing a better backup quarterback.
Yeah, option. No, obviously it's not an ideal situation for sure. And I do think part of the agreement for him running it back is making some real structural changes to how he approaches the job. Taking a back seat maybe in personnel is one of them. Having a different approach to his offense so they don't fold. I think they're one and the same, though. I think Chris Greer has drafted guys that aren't particularly tough. I do. I think he's drafted and acquired guys that aren't particularly tough. And he's overlooked the trenches in a way that is stunning to anyone who knew him as a disciple of the Parcells tree, right? I just think at some point enough's enough. And if you run Chris back for 7 years, everyone's going to be gone in 12 months. I don't see how that roster gets significantly better with the decisions that he's made over the course of his time. And keep in mind, he was GM before 6 years ago, too. He just didn't have final say, right? So, again, I get it. I know logistically it's messy. Totally get it.
Yeah.
Teams can figure out ways to make it work. And I think, you don't – you tell the GM, whoever it is like, Mike, you might be close to the mic, might have a comfort level, you might know what he's looking for. You're going to be judged on your own decisions. So make the good ones. And
yeah, but the thing is, because you're kind of ragging on Greer for drafting players whose forte is not toughness. That's who the Dolphins are, particularly on offense. Like, for example, do we not think, even though it's never been really said, that it was Mike McDaniel who said, that Devon Achane over there, give him to me.
Well, I would say that pick's worked out. I'm
Eric, but he's not a tough guy. He's a finesse player.
Sure. But maybe you tell your head coach, okay, you can use Devon on first and second down, but if it's third and short, you're putting Jeff freaking Wilson.
Yeah, and then you're overstepping. Let's address that quarterback position in light of the news Thursday that Teddy Bridgewater, fresh off an insane state title run at Miami Northwestern High School. If you saw the scores, like practically every playoff score was like 50-0 or 56-6.
Okay, I will say this because I've done a little bit of high school football writing.
Go ahead.
They play in just a ridiculously easy classification.
So yeah,
it's not like they're going up against Chaminade and St. Thomas. There's a lot of cupcakes in their schedules. I know, all due respect.
I agree. No, they're basically their talent level is good enough to compete with teams that have the highest classification, which is based on enrollment, not quality.
Yeah, and their biggest rival got lost all their wins because they were using illegal players. So
correct. Anyway,
all that being said,
Teddy Bridgewater is back in the NFL, signed with the Detroit Lions. And very interesting, I don't know if you heard the Dan Campbell clip talking about how he had conversations with Teddy Bridgewater for pretty much the whole year, talking about the possibility of this happening. And they signed him to the active roster, not the practice squad, to be elevated. And the idea is to give them some sort of veteran presence because their backup quarterback is Hendon Hooker, who's thrown 9 passes and 3 blowout wins in his 2 seasons in the NFL. And this brings us to the Dolphins. And it's not like I haven't gone over this a zillion times about Teddy Bridgewater. At the very least, dear listeners, who I love for your dedication, can you please give me at the very least that he was eons better than either Skylar Thompson, Tim Boyle, or Tyler Snoop Huntley, and that the Dolphins should make a Teddy Bridgewater type the absolute lowest bar for the kind of backup quarterback they get in 2025.
Totally agree. I totally agree. If it's not a Bridgewater caliber that they signed in free agency, it was a failed free agency. I totally agree with you on that. I also think they should draft someone. I think that if they have 2 third-round picks and there's a guy they like in the 3rd round, draft a guy. Because, every team should have a developmental quarterback on their roster. And they thought Skylar, after 3 years in the system, was going to be that guy, right? Was going to be the guy that, consistency and continuity and, here we go. Just because it failed doesn't mean it was a bad idea. And that's the idea they need to have. I'm of the opinion that you should be drafting a quarterback every single year.
Are you one of those?
Yeah, for sure. Because if you stumble across gold, even if you don't use them, it's a huge trade asset then. Or it's an enormous security blanket for sure. I think that we've seen, and we talked about quarterback and coach being really the only thing that matters to a degree, but not the only thing that matters, but you know what I mean. I don't think you can invest enough in them. And some of these guys are like, "Oh, I need, there's a potential, project edge rusher I could have gotten in round 3. Sure, those are valuable too. That guy isn't going to win you a Super Bowl if you need him to step in. Like, he's not going to do that. If you need a quarterback and your quarterback goes down, you need someone who has the capability of playing at a high level. It's so much more important than the other position. So, yeah, I think they should do both. I think they should sign a guy like Bridgewater, and I think they should draft somebody in the middle rounds.
Except I'm going to play devil's advocate again. Because I love playing devil's advocate. You kind of have to temper your expectations if you're taking a quarterback in the 3rd round, because if you look at the high-end guys, who are we talking about? Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow. Those are all first-round picks.
Sure. Yeah, totally get that. But there are mid-round picks that work out. There are. I mean, Russell Wilson had a fantastic career, and he wasn't even going to be their starter, right? When they drafted him, he won that job.
He did.
Obviously, that wouldn't happen here because you have $50 million a year invested in your quarterback. But he would, if you come across a Russell Wilson type, he would give you confidence at some point if you're ready to move on from Tua to do it. And that's something else to consider. Like, I'm not saying that Tua is not their guy for the future, but if he gets hurt again this year, you're definitely drafting a quarterback in 2026, right? Why not get ahead of it and at least have somebody in the system that, he showed a lot. Maybe we might take a step back in 1 year if we move on from Tua, but it's not going to be a disaster for us. So I think there are a lot of advantages of drafting quarterbacks every year.
Okay, that's fair. I don't have a problem with that. Tyreek Hill. So we spoke to the 3 coordinators, as we always do on Thursdays, and then the 2 assistant coaches. We get 3 coordinators plus 2 assistants every Thursday. It was Brian Duker, secondary coach, and then there was Wes Welker, who's always great to talk to, wide receivers coach. And he validated something that I had said. Actually, Frank Smith validated something that I said. And when I'm done here with my little spiel, you can tell me which side of the fence you stood on. Frank Smith kind of said the ball's tipped at the last second. Not really a drop. And then Wes Welker, the other point that I made earlier is I know we focus a ton on Tyreek Hill's numbers, which are way down. We have to understand and if it's coming across as I'm making excuses for Tyreek, so be it. Been dealing with injuries up the wazoo the entire season, and then also the attention he gets. If you think Devon Achane and Jonnu Smith are getting big numbers, the most successful in terms of number of receptions, running back in Dolphin history, tight end in Dolphin history. If you think this room that Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle create underneath with all the attention they get wasn't a major factor in and then Achane and Smith setting those records, don't know what to tell you. So it's kind of like, it's weird because he's effective even if the numbers aren't there, though he does drop too many passes.
Yeah. Okay. So I think a lot of these things can be true. I think that he's struggling to beat double coverage for sure. I think his body is not what it was last year. I think that's fair as well. I think there also might be some regression though. And that's something the Dolphins this offseason are going to have to figure out, like, what can we blame on what, right? And here's something that someone sent me the stat that I think is pretty telling. 2023, Tyreek had 30 some odd targets. This is versus man coverage, by the way. This is man coverage. 27 catches on 30 some odd targets, 445 yards, 10.4 yards per target. So 27 catches, 445 yards, 10.4 yards per target against man coverage, which you're supposed to beat if you're an elite receiver. 2024, 38 targets, 14 catches, 191 yards, 5.02 yards per target. He is averaging half per target what he did last year in man coverage. That tells me that it's not a matter of scheme so much as the guy just can't get open, okay? And if the guy can't get open, we saw what Stingley did to him. He put him in a vice, okay? The guy can't get open against man coverage. It better be the ankle, right, or the foot, or whatever it is he's dealing with, right? That better be the reason. It better not be. He's about to be 31 years old, a ton of miles, okay? Like that to me is what they're going to have to decide. And unfortunately, they went on a spending spree in the summer, and they didn't have to guarantee a salary next year.
Excellent point.
They did. So if you're going to move on from them, you're going to have to find a trade partner. You can't cut him. So either he's on your team next year, and you're fingers crossed that this is just a one-off because he can't stay healthy. I mean, that's the thing, is that Tyreek saw plenty of double coverage in Kansas City. He saw plenty of double coverage the first 2 years in Miami. He was still able to get open and make plays. He can't get open anymore. And that is crazy to me. It's absolutely wild. And he's had some egregious drops. I know you mentioned the pinky touch wasn't a drop. It was an altered pass that some receivers come down with. Wasn't a drop.
Okay. I appreciate you saying it wasn't a drop. Thank you.
He had 2 drops in that game as well.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
So it's not what you're looking for a guy you're paying $30 million to.
No, and the problem is I know you advocated for the idea of trading him. Who's going to give you what for a guy who's expensive, coming off his worst year since he was a rookie in the NFL? And, oh, by the way, is not exactly somebody who doesn't, how can I put this delicately, doesn't bring a lot of circus-like, incidents or show to your organization.
Yeah. They're not going to get nearly the return they would have gotten at the trade deadline, which is why I advocated them trading him. It's obviously not going to be the case. So then you have to weigh, like, am I getting a 5th round pick for Tyreek? Do I make that deal? Probably not, because you're still incurring a pretty big cap hit, even if you trade him. But if you get a day 2 pick for the dude, and you can move on from all this nonsense,
you trade him for 1-2. Damn,
I would absolutely move on for him and for a 2nd round pick. 100%, I would.
Okay,
100%, I would.
Okay.
Look, you got 3 years out of him. Usually 3 or 4 years is the lifespan of a free agent pickup. And I know he was a traded asset, but he was essentially a free agent pickup.
Mm-hmm.
You're at the end of year 3, and it's not going well at all. You've won 0 playoff games. And here's the thing, is that if last year he was balling out at the biggest moments of the season, and he's just hurt this year, that'd be one thing. He and Tua, I don't know if it's one causing the other or they're both kind of freak out. But Tua, Tyreek, and McDaniel all have their own personal worst performances against the best teams. And I don't know. And again, this is the same reason I'm advocating moving on for Greer. If you run this whole thing back next year, they're just firing everybody at the next year because they're going to be 9-8 or 10-7 again and lose in the first round. Like, that's.
Yeah, but no, I hear you, and you make a good point. But my thing is, how big of a change can you make with so much of the core? Like, the core on offense is Tua, Tyreek, Jalen Waddle. And then the offensive line is basically in the outside zone scheme. And who's your running back is Devon Achane. So everything is built around speed, and to go to a more physical, aggressive style, which is what wins in the playoffs and in December. I think we can all agree on that. That requires almost like.
I wouldn't have a 280-pound center to begin with. And again, I think Aaron Brewer is a really good player, but
performed very well.
Yeah, I think the 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2 failures are a lot of your interior offensive line.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, Brewer's spoken for. The 2 guards are not, right? The 2 guards absolutely are not. The left tackle, you think it's going to be Patrick Paul next year? You're pretty sure? No, to be honest, he's been fine. He wasn't terrible as a rookie. He's been fine.
Has to be him.
You need to spend significant capital either in the draft or in free agency on fixing the guard position, because they laughed at us last year and they're not laughing now. They're not laughing now because they got blown off the line of scrimmage. And I know we're running late, but here's one reason I think that McDaniel might be fed up with Chris Greer.
Go ahead.
He blamed the blocking for the run game being so bad. He specifically says our blocking is not good enough.
Yeah. They violated the line of scrimmage is the time.
Correct. Violated the line of scrimmage. And that's supposed to be Greer's baby, right? That's the one thing he talked about when he took over. We're going to build this the right way from the trenches. Here you are in year 6, which is supposed to be one of your peak years, and you can't pick up 3rd and 1. Okay? So, yeah. That to me, I think there might be. I'm not saying Mike's going to go to Steve and say, get rid of Chris Greer, but I think he sees that there's some real shortcomings with the personnel decisions that Steve makes.
Yeah, and I think we also can agree that the power dynamic has shifted toward McDaniel. With the extension he got before the season started, and then the idea that's come out that he basically nixed the idea of trading Calais Campbell at the deadline. I think that tells you a little bit that McDaniel's got a lot of juice. Let's wrap it up with final thoughts here on the Cleveland game. The weather forecast, apparently, for those who are going to be traveling to the game, actually not terrible in terms of the temperature, but there's rain in the forecast.
It could be one of those games. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Does that give you a little trepidation about the Dolphins' ability to pull it out?
No, because the Browns are terrible. I mean, look, if Myles Garrett runs wild, maybe, but I don't see how the Browns can score points. Like, that's the thing; they're not going to be able to score. So I think 17 points gets it done.
Agreed. I agree. And in fact, I was watching the red zone the other day, and it's like the game starts and Jerome Ford busts a 66-yard run to like the 3-yard line, and then they fumble at the goal line, and then they come close to scoring until the 4th quarter. Yeah. It was like, ooh, I mean, it's not a good team. Yes, the Dolphins will win. My guess is they'll finish 9-8, and they'll be telling themselves, if it wasn't for the Tua injury, maybe we're in the playoffs. But again, they probably would have been a one and done. This is
100%. 100%. All right. So say you get in as the 7 seed. So it'd be Buffalo or Baltimore. Mm-hmm. Good luck with that. Okay.
Yep. And so this is why, and I don't know, given the way the Dolphins are built, I don't know that there's enough tweaking they can do with this foundation to get to the next level. I really don't. And that was my concern at the end of last year, and that remains my concern now.
So. Okay, and here's the thing. If I'm Steve Ross and you have every single member of the media saying, hey, bro, what about this O-line? And you see your general manager saying, we're good. Same with their backup quarterback situation. We're good. And you double down on all these contracts. That's the thing. Is that like Greer's been given everything he's been asked for, and it's fallen short. So yes, I understand logistically it can get messy if you fire one and keep the other. I don't think that's a rationale to keep a general manager that hasn't done his job to the level he should have.
Okay, but let me ask you this way, and then I know we keep saying last thing. Well, there's several last things. All right. Now I know you're saying that's the thing they should do. Do you think it's a thing they will do? Give me a percentage. There's a general managerial change.
60%.
That high? Okay.
Because here's the thing. I can't imagine the renewals are great. And if your job is to sell running this all back, and again, a general manager doesn't sell tickets, but he might persuade people to stop buying tickets. If you're a fan and you're on the fence about renewing, you're like, why the hell am I going to do this? They can't even get the GM right. I'm not saying it's the number one factor, but I think it might be a factor if they're worried about losing the fan base. Because I mean, I'll say this: certainly, Dolphins fans and Bills fans are two totally different species. Okay, I mean,
yeah,
it's a generational thing in Buffalo. Right? It is like your great grandfather rooted for the Bills. Okay, like that's different than Miami, where the percentage of native-born South Floridians are much lower than the percentage of native-born Buffalonians. Is that Buffalonians?
I like that. Buffaloons? No, I like Buffalonians.
There are people that are going to check out, I think. And that's
fair.
When at some point, enough's enough, man. It really is. And I think we probably I think if the Dolphins would have no-showed last week against the Niners, I think Mike would have had some problems. Like if you no-showed against the Niners and then you lose one of these last two games, there would have been a rationale for completely blowing this thing up. I think if he gets to 9-8, 3 straight winning seasons, you don't fire coaches with 3 straight winning seasons. I don't care what the circumstances are. But if you have a GM for 6 years with 0 playoff wins, that's a different story.
We shall find out. I'm going to officially put my percentage at 30%.
Okay. Well, you think Chris Greer is coming back?
I do. I think he's going to. Right. I think he's going to. Sorry.
You're probably right. I mean, Steve Ross loves him some Chris Greer. Right? It would take him putting loyalty aside, which is what I wrote. It was like that's what he has to do because I know there's a lot of goodwill between those two men.
Correct, window. So, on that note, final score prediction.
Oh, I think it's not going to be close. I think it's going to be like a 28-12 something situation, something like that.
Okay, there you go. I'll have my final score prediction on Saturday morning on MiamiDolphinsInside.com. He is Adam Beasley from Pro Football Network. This has been the day after Christmas edition of the All Dolphins podcast. Please like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. Be back here on Friday. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of the evening.
Enjoy your Boxing Day.
Thank you, Bees.